Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of your Brains Coach podcast, applied neuroscience for leaders, entrepreneurs, and high performance. I'm your host, Angela Sharina. I'm your Brains Coach, and here again, you are about to learn all the brain tools you can use to feel, look, and do your absolute best. Because today is an amazing day because we have a guest on this podcast. It's not going to be just me. It's going to be another amazing human being who has so much to share about brain performance. Today we have Chris Reynolds, a long-term digital nomad, a high performer, a business owner, creator of communities for adventurous, thriving, high-performing entrepreneurs. Chris has so much to share, and also he happens to be into high brain performance and very passionate about brain optimization. That's why I'm so pumped to have Chris on our today's podcast. Right? Chris Reynolds, how brain optimization can help to build a thriving business and an extraordinary life as a long-term nomad and true citizen of the world. Keep it awesome, keep it cool. And this is Chris, model for life, personal growth, and business. On today's podcast with Chris, we'll talk about why we choose safe and familiar over our own, very often messy, sometimes dangerous path, but that the paths that can lead to extraordinary. Like, why do we do this? For our work week, we wonder with Chris how many nomadic journeys it inspired. It inspired Chris, it inspired me, maybe you as well. How Chris started as a digital nomad, how he started his career business journey 12 years ago when digital nomad world really didn't exist. Why so many digital nomads choose, especially at the beginning, lower income but more freedom over higher income and a more settled, safe life. Never-ending travel lifestyle. It actually doesn't have to cost a lot. Many nomads often begin with just essentials, knowing that they'll figure it out on the way. How to maximize happiness and prevent loneliness as a digital nomad, a very, very important topic, guys. From building websites to creating communities and living working spaces for global, thriving, adventurous entrepreneurs. Chris' entrepreneurial journey while traveling the world. How do you know as a business owner that it's time to transition and build a new dream versus burning yourself out mentally and emotionally with the same old stuff? How Chris got into brain high performance that he teaches to the members of his entrepreneur community. How a high-performing and a burned-out brain look differently on brain scans. Chris has been scanning the brains of entrepreneurs around the world for a few years now. When is it good time to make decisions, speaking of different brain states? How Chris optimizes his to-do list based on how his brain state feels. How brain optimization can help you with business, relationships, and other areas of your life. The most powerful aspect of brain optimization for Chris. The most important habits for a nomadic entrepreneur who's been committed to growing his business while hopping between countries. Why do many nomad business owners switch to slowmatic? How Chris approaches his goal setting and scheduling to make sure that no matter where his travels take him, he's always on track with his growth in the most important areas. Fitness, lifestyle, nutrition routines of a nomadic entrepreneur into high performance. Chris shares it all. Chris' hard-to-kill fitness goals approach to make sure he's never going out of shape. These topics, subjects, and so much more you're gonna learn and hear and enjoy on this podcast today. Your brain will absolutely love it. Chris has so much to share, not just about brain performance, but also about life's wisdom of a digital nomad or a person who is into growth. And as the saying goes, we are either growing or dying. And Chris is definitely a representation, a great one, of how to make growth your constant and persistent and dominant life's journey, right? So without further ado, please enjoy, please take notes, please tune in to our conversation with Chris Reynolds. And don't forget to share this podcast and tune in to future episodes. So pumped to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to do the interview.
I'm excited, Angela, to be here, and let's make an awesome podcast. What do you say?
Yes. I think if you gotta, like, if you choose to do something, it's gotta be awesome.
Yes, of course. Like, why else? What else? Why would you do anything else in life? Like, just do awesome things. That's like, I have a rule, and it's just kind of a guideline for my life. Like, if it's not cool, I don't want to do it. So like I became an entrepreneur because I thought it was really cool. If it's, I traveled the world because I thought that was really cool. I eat healthy because I think that's really cool. I would exercise because I think that's really cool. And so that's my rule. Like I'm also like, I think people that are really good human beings are really cool. And that's kind of like my guideline as well. Like, how can I be a better human being? Well, look at all these cool people that are really good human beings. And it's not about image so much, but it's about like the activities or the vibe that somebody has, or the energy that somebody has on how cool they are. So that's keep it awesome, keep it cool.
I couldn't agree more. And I think in the world, many people just kind of settle for just okay, doing good enough. And maybe partially because it takes additional energy, and also it's not as safe to do, cool things that are a little bit more extraordinary than ordinary, things that are not tried and proven, things that, you might fail at. And it's a little bit more costly, so to speak, right? Just if you were to optimize for safety. So I think that's why a lot of people just don't do that. It's good enough, so why bother?
Well, and traditional education doesn't teach you necessarily to do those things. It's like, oh, go to school, get good grades, and get a good job. And I mean, getting good grades was when I was in high school was never that cool. But looking back, it is actually really cool. And then getting a job is kind of cool when you start out, but like just keeping the same job for 30 or 40 years, like that's not very cool. And, and they say nowadays people have an average of 5 different careers in their life, which makes sense. That's much cooler. Right. And then for us, like nomad entrepreneurs, like we want to do all the cool things and travel the world and build these awesome businesses around it. And so, but so many people are just taught like, this is what you need to do. And then you'll be taken care of. At least it's more of a survival mindset as opposed to like the abundance mindset of, you do whatever you want, especially in today's world. There's limitless opportunities to do whatever you want.
Yes. The world is truly limitless. Before we jump into your story, I actually wanted to make a note about, I think, why society teaches also you to kind of take the proven path. And by society, I mean, it's people, who love us, like our parents or our friends, like this, do this will work. Many people did it. You're probably also going to be able to do it. Yeah. Because we don't often talk about there is like more, I don't know, danger or more chance to fail when you do it your way. And I don't want, people to think also, like listeners, that it's going to be an easy path if you choose your own thing. Like I've struggled through so many things, because I chose my own way. So it's not easy, but for me, it's worth it. Right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? Like choosing the familiar and probably safer, or, that dangerous, a little bit more dangerous or a lot more dangerous, but that can lead to extraordinary things. Like, why did you choose one after?
This leads into some brain stuff that we could talk about, which I know you love. And, the reptilian brain, the amygdala is wired to be 75% negative. So it is controlling just so much of us that we don't even realize. And so if you look at a parent's job is to survive themselves and to, let's just say the average parents, not all parents, but survive themselves and to create, keep their young, make sure they survive as well. And with the amygdala controlling like 75% of, or is putting out like 75% negativity on a regular basis. It's like, oh, be afraid, take care of this, like get insurance so you don't have to worry about that. Get a retirement so you don't have to worry about, when you're older and you can't work. Get a safe, secure job so you don't have to worry about not having money come in. And each generation really comes from a completely different perspective of the current generation. So my parents' generation, the way, and yours as well, I'm sure, like the way they grew up is much different than how we grew up and how we're coexisting in the world today. And then my grandparents' generation, your grandparents' generation, much, much different, like here's something interesting. You're from Russia. I'm from the United States. Our grandparents could have fought side by side in World War II against Germany and the Axis powers, the Nazis. And then a few years later, they could have been enemies in the Cold War, And so there's so much of this going on. And it's about like, we want to make sure parents want to make sure our kids survive. That's the first and foremost thing, especially with the amygdala shouting at ourselves, shouting at our brains so much. And then people are like, okay, survival means food, water, shelter, get a house. I've got a house, get a job, that's income. I've got a job. And then, make sure I bring in food. Then, you find a partner and you can start a family and you can reproduce and you can create, the next generation. And then where in our educational models are people saying, our parents saying, parents say that when you're young, you can be anything you want. But when the kid's like, I want to be an astronaut, and the dad's like, well, that's not really realistic. You still can be anything you want, but, maybe not an astronaut. Maybe you should just be a construction worker or get a sales job or work for an insurance company, right? And so then it leaves a lot of people just thinking, and again, their amygdala is talking to them saying, I need a survival first. Whereas I think a lot of us nomads or entrepreneurs were like, survival. Yeah, we'll handle that later. Let's go out. Let's just get a flight and let's just go to Mexico or, Europe or Asia or wherever. We'll survive. We'll figure that out later. So I don't know if there's something different in our brains, or maybe we just picked up the right information throughout our younger years, or maybe we just don't want to live a half-lived life. I don't know. So it's really hard to pinpoint because all the situations are very different. But I think like survival is a big thing that motivates most people, and that's why they end up where they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, why I was driven also to pursue this path. For me, survival in boring, right? It's boring life is worse than death. Like that's, it's being that inside, it's worse than dying.
Yeah.
But again, not sure why exactly that was wired in my head.
Well, survival, if you don't mind real quick, like survival is really, if you think about it, it's just a slow decay. Right. And so we can either grow or we can decay. Those are the two states. There's no stagnant state. Right. And if we're not growing, we're doing the opposite. We're decaying. Right. And so we have to continually grow. And then survival is just like, you're not growing when you're surviving. You're just slowly decaying, and it's going just slowly downhill to death. And so like I look at friends that I grew up with, and people I went to college with, and I look much younger still to this day than they do. And I'm sure part of it's genes, but also is like I enjoy my life. Like I do the things that make me happy. And I know people that have just been stressed out for the past 10 to 15 years. Like their hair's gray, wrinkles all over their face. They don't look like the same person they did 10 years prior. And so that's like growing, I guess, going back to, we must love growth because we're just continually pursuing it, I would imagine.
Yeah. Or maybe also, it's something about being more future wired. Like, if you think about that, if you think about your future right now, like I think about my future in 30, 40, 50 years, I'm like,
Hmm.
this is where I want to be. And the life of getting a regular job, not going to lead there, right?
Yeah.
But if you're only like worried about it in the next 2, 3 years, then it doesn't look that bad,
Yeah.
having a job for the next 2, 3 years. And
Yeah.
then from that point, again, it doesn't look that bad, right? And you kind of end up in your 60s and 70s, never really having designed for the life you really wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
So,
So, Chris, let's jump into your story. We can talk about that stuff, for hours. Like, tell listeners about yourself. How did you end up being a digital nomad? Where it all started, and also what do you do now as a digital nomad, as an entrepreneur?
yeah. Thank you. So I guess, it really, like so many other nomads, it started reading the book 4 Hour Work Week. But I was an entrepreneur before I read that book. And this was in 2009, the first time I read it. And my, the motivation behind me being an entrepreneur was freedom, even back then. Because I was thinking if I could get my business to this level, then I could go live like abroad and live in different countries and have regular income. And I remember having those dreams, like even before that book came in play. Then the 4 Hour Work Week changed it for so many of us and still is. And rightfully so. Like that book has done an amazing job. And I read that and I'm like, oh, all I have to do is build this thing online, like, and I can live anywhere in the world. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can handle living anywhere in the world. Let's see if we can just make something work online. So I started building niche websites online. It started bringing in some money. I actually started doing some even English teaching online just to make some money when I was starting out. This is 2010, I guess. And finally, after a year and a half of just focusing on like growing some stuff online, I decided I was going to buy a one-way ticket to Costa Rica and live the dream. And so I was with a girl at the time and we got a house on the beach and had good income coming in and had a nice little life. And but we wanted to travel more. And so the next place like we went, we were like, hey, we're in South America. Why don't we go down to Peru? We'll do some hang out there for a while. And then like I really wanted to go to Europe. I hadn't spent much time in Europe. And so I came to Spain, which is where I am now. And just continued to travel the world and grow business while I did it. And, for me, it was like, I remember talking to friends back home. I'd go back home and they're like, Chris, like I have a master's degree and Chris, they're like, you're in your late 20s and you have a master's degree and you're making $30,000 a year online. And I'm like, yeah. And it's awesome because I can do it anywhere from the world. And they're like, yeah, but I can get you this job making $120,000. And I'm like, well, do I have to stay put in one city? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, there's no trade there for me. Like to be able to live anywhere and make $30,000 a year online versus $120,000 and live in, Arizona, which is where I started out from. Then it's just like, there's no option. So, and I would tell them that, but they wouldn't understand. They didn't have that mindset. So I just continued to do it, and I got involved in some other businesses here and there, and started increasing the income and making more money. And around 2015, this was like I would say it's still pre-digital nomad boom. I was just meeting all these awesome people. I was living in Barcelona at the time, and I started having people live in business accelerators and co-living for a month at a time, and we built business together. And I started a podcast, and I started it because we were just having all these amazing conversations about business. I thought, let's just put this out to the world. And so we did, and just kept doing it over time. And now we're over 600 episodes or so, and have just been rocking and rolling and not going to stop anytime soon.
Yes, yeah. That's, and thank you, for sharing like the the beginnings, like, the humble beginnings that you didn't start necessarily. Like, there are different kinds of nomads, but sometimes it seems like people who are nomadic, they kind of like have all this stuff figured out. They have a lot of money, really thriving business, and they decide, to travel.
Hmm.
But, very often I hear the other story, like you just start and maybe not so well off, but then you build and you grow having the lifestyle that you wanted to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Very true.
Yeah. So, podcasts, you mentioned some work on websites. I also know that you have an entrepreneurial community. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about that? I'm just curious myself. They could,
Yeah.
different business models and what people do to for living as digital nomads.
Yeah. So when I moved to Costa Rica that first time, and it was 2011, I ended up and we had this cool lifestyle living on the beach, working online. But after it's probably 6 months or so, I really started to realize that I was really lonely in Costa
Mm,
Rica. And I didn't quite pinpoint it until actually a couple years later, because in Peru I was very lonely as well. And what I had in the States before I left was a really incredible community of
mhm,
entrepreneurs, a community of big thinkers, of people that are into personal growth. And so I landed, fast forward to 2014, I landed in Barcelona and I started this idea of doing these co-living entrepreneur houses. All of a sudden my happiness and my happiness went, yeah, it skyrocketed and my
mhm.
loneliness went out the door. And I was like, oh, I'm missing my people. That's the thing that I really missed. And so then I was like, okay, I know for me to be happy and not lonely, I need my people on a regular basis. So I continue to
Mhm.
build businesses around entrepreneurs and mainly location independent entrepreneurs. And so we had the entrepreneur house going that went for a few years. And then I started doing performance optimization stuff
Mm,
online, courses and different types of coaching. And then it moved into, we were doing masterminds as well. And it moved into the mastermind community wanted to be its own private community.
mhm,
And so the members were like, hey, let's start doing events together, and so we would put an event together for them. And I've always tried to create businesses for the entrepreneur that I want to become, right?
mhm.
And so my idea originally was let's create entrepreneur houses for these entrepreneurs that I want to be more like, that are running awesome businesses and traveling the world, and then I can learn from them, right? So I'm serving them, but also learning as well. So then it moved into like, oh, why don't we create a community for 7-figure entrepreneurs? And then we can create a really awesome community, high level community, and I can learn from them as well. And so we can all grow together.
Mhm.
And so we did that. And the name of the community is called M3. We call it a club, M3 Entrepreneur Club. And we do really cool things like we have private high level masterminds in the metaverse now. So
Mm,
we buy all the members VR goggles. So we do that monthly. Then we have about 5 events per year where we're getting ready to go to Morocco, and
mhm.
we're doing an adventure trip, like going into the desert and staying in luxury tents, and then going to Casablanca and doing hammams, and so really fancy stuff, fun stuff. Then, we went to Mexico and did a luxury trip on the beach. We went to Las Vegas and we flew in stunt airplanes and drove race cars. So
Sounds
fun
cool.
little things like this. And so we do that on a regular basis. Then also on my podcast, I get some pretty amazing guests. And so for some of the higher level guests that come on the show, the members of the M3 community, they can come in and do a live recording with the guest and then a
Mhm.
Q&A session afterwards, which they really like because they get to touch base with, some, like we did that with Chris Voss, who's the
Mhm.
FBI's
Yeah.
lead hostage negotiator. And they were ecstatic about that because normally they would either have to pay like $5,000 to go to his event,
Mhm.
or they wouldn't be able to meet him. So that's a cool little ad that we have, and we're really growing. Like we're putting these awesome people together. We have members from all over the world, continuing to do these fun, exciting events and really grow and scale our businesses together and just enjoy life.
No, that sounds like a really cool business model. You get to know all these people and learn from them and learn together and also spend time together. Kind of, I don't know, best of all worlds.
Best of all
Like,
worlds, yes.
yeah, like-minded people learning, doing adventures. Yeah, why not? So it's
Yeah.
cool.
Well, I think too, you get to a point, and I imagine you're like with your business, like you probably are at this point as well. You want to create a business that you really enjoy, as opposed to just selling something or online, selling a service or a product, right? Because that gets old. I have a friend who has he just last year he hit $10 million a year in his business, and he's selling products on there, but he's kind of like bored of it. He's just kind of like, I have no enthusiasm for my work anymore. And, the product that he chose it really helped him in his life, but, and helps a lot of people, but there's just something huge that's missing. And so, after you burn yourself out of a couple of businesses like I did, you get to the point where you're like, hey, I know I can work on this thing for the next 10 years and I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm going to be happy that this is going to be my job for the next decade.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, we need to be excited about life, and work takes a lot of time, of a lot of our life. And so if we're not excited about the work that we do, then we are not excited about the most of our life. So that's kind of not the place, I think, where you want to be. I personally, this year been kind of really challenging for me, and but I was able to just put a stop to the business that was not inspiring me any longer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to do this new thing from scratch, from zero,
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I can, envision myself again, as you said, for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So whatever that is, to be growing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Good choice, Angela. Good choice.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So let's, the reason why I actually wanted to interview you also was that you talk a lot about brain performance, high performance, right? And it seems like you are delivering that to the communities that you built as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell me and our listeners a little bit more about that aspect? Like, what aspect of performance do you help people with? And, maybe like, I don't know, your personal takeaways, lessons, anything that is related to that area.
Yeah, sure. I'll rewind a bit and like me, myself, I've always been, what I call a high performer. But I didn't know I was a high performer because like we didn't use that term until maybe like 5 years ago. And so I was just like, I like to get stuff done. Like I like to make a list and go knock it out. And it felt good for me to do that. And I was always like unconsciously even just managing my energy. Like I stopped drinking sodas because I realized that drinking water, I have more energy throughout the day. I would notice these things at a really young age. My dad said this is not true, but one time he said, Chris, if you drink Sprite, you're going to be able to run faster than if you drink Pepsi. And so I started drinking Sprite, but it, totally not true. But then even in high school, I was like, I bet if I eat salad and vegetables, I'm going to have more energy than if I eat like milk and cereal and pizza, what everybody else is eating. And so it evolved into like, I enjoyed sharing these conversations and having podcasts like this, where we talked about how people could optimize their energy levels, because that's what it really boils down to. And in 2020, I'd say I've done so well at getting stuff done too much, too long, too often that I actually burnt myself out of business. So I don't know, maybe if I didn't do it too well, but and so I burned myself out of a couple of businesses. And in 2019, late 2019, I realized that I was on the verge of burning myself out of another business. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Like, what's really, at play here? I know I work too much. I tend to obsess about working too much and doing even the little things that I should outsource I'm not the best at doing. But I had an event that ran for 5 years in Thailand. It was called Get Shit Done Live. And I always wanted a brain scanner at this event. And so I met a neuroscientist. I actually had that neuroscientist on the podcast, and he started telling me about the brain scanners that were out there. And then I just started doing some research, and I went and finally found in the States a place that does brain scans. And I got a brain scan. This is late 2019, and my brain was burnout. Now, if you've ever seen a brain scan of a burnout brain, it kind of looks like cool turquoise blue colors. Whereas a more optimized brain, there would be more red and like volcano type of colors and oranges. And so there's literally more brain reaction voltage in the brain. And so it really dumbs down to this is like the more joy and happiness you have in your life, the increase of voltage that you'll have in your brain, the more stress and anxiety and depression and, doing things that burn you out, the decrease in brain reaction voltage you'll have in your brain. And it makes a lot of sense. It's just like a battery we have in here, And so when I saw that brain scan, I was like, one of two things. One, I need to fix my brain. Two, I want to buy this brain scanner so I can fix my brain. And so, but it wasn't cheap. It was a $14,000, piece of equipment. But the good thing is you could carry it on a carry-on and I could travel the world with it. Right. So we had this, fast forward a little bit, we started this community, M3, and, a lot of the members were just asking me all the time about brain optimization and me scanning my brain. And I would scan some of my friends' brains and show them the result. And so we decided, like, why don't we just scan our members' brains for free whenever they want? Because they pay, they pay us well. So we want to, return the favors. And so we decided to offer that so the members can get brain scans whenever we're in person. And then we have a partnership with a neurologist that reads the brain scan. So they'll get a 26-page report on where their brain is. And then the doctor will tell them, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z, this type of exercise, this type of meditation, this type of supplementation, this type of activities to help optimize and increase your brain health. And so we just kept doing it. Like I've scanned probably 70 brains to this point, and then myself probably another 15 times. And so every few months, like I'll plop the brain scanner on and scan my brain and just see where it is and how it's doing. And so, once we start to understand the basics of neuroscience, which I think that you know pretty well, and understand our brain waves like alpha, beta, theta, and delta, and where our brain waves are, and then checking into that, like we can really become productive and optimized when we know where our brain is, like what state our brain is during different times of the day. A good example is like trying to make decisions or have hard conversations when you're already stressed and anxious. That means your brain is in what they call beta state or high beta. And high beta is where we see most of the stress and anxiety. It's not a good place to make decisions. It's not a good place to have hard conversations with your business partner or your lover or your kids or your family members. You need to change that brain state and go down into like a more calm alpha state before you dive into that.
Yeah, that's really cool part about the tech part of that, right? I worked on the same stuff, but I do not have any high-tech stuff to measure that. Of course, it's, really beneficial when people can measure stuff and they can see how things actually change, not just by feeling, but also having some more objective data.
Yeah.
Right, so that's really amazing part. Do you have something that can measure your waves like right now, whenever you want?
I don't. And I know the Muse does that, right? And so the thing is like, since I've got a brain scan, I've kind of got pretty involved in the neuroscience and neurotech world, especially the neurotech world.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some really great devices, and there's some really crappy devices that a lot of people think are great, that aren't necessarily giving the best information. And so, so I have a few other brain tech, some of them that I use, but some that I wouldn't recommend as well. And it's also very individualized. So like I have literally had talked to neuroscientists and high performers that swear that the Muse changed their life. Actually, we had the Dr. Michael Bruce come on the podcast, who's like, he's like the sleep doctor, top sleep doctor in the US, in the US, right? Loves the Muse, thinks it's the most amazing, or one of the most amazing, changed his life. And then we also had another entrepreneur. This guy scaled, he's founder of Newtopia. So he has nootropic business, very successful. He's scaled 14 seven-figure companies in his life, and he's in his mid-40s. Like he's a high performer for sure. Thinks the Muse is dirt. Thinks it is like the absolute piece of crap that he's ever seen. The biggest piece of crap. And so I think a lot of times like those devices, they can be individualized and they can work really well for you, but may not work so well for me. But I think but we just got to try them out and see how they work for us. But I think I've gotten, and this is me boasting a little bit, I think I've gotten pretty good at tuning in to where my brain waves are based on feeling my emotional state. And so, for example, like just going back to that earlier example, when I feel stressed and anxious and tense, I make a conscious decision not to have any hard conversations, to go on a walk, not to even come on podcasts, not to like engage with other people until I get back into that calmer, low beta or even alpha state. I can pick out like when I'm in theta, and I can feel theta based on right before when I go to sleep or when I'm in a deep meditation. And the delta, of course, is pretty much unconscious or extremely deep meditation. Yeah. But I've played with some of those devices. A lot of them are fun, and then some of them are just like they need more work, sort of thing. There's a lot of space for the neurotech industry to grow.
Yeah, I think, we are only at the beginning of what eventually the tech will allow us to do. For me, I don't know, since I was a kid, I was very sensitive to any biofeedback in my body. So I can literally feel the parts of my brain that are the most active. And I know that when I'm stressed, this part of the brain is active. What I'm trying to do, I'm visualizing this part, just relaxing and moving, that tension into different parts of my brain.
Yes.
And that helps almost instantly. Plus the breathing, and things like that.
A really cool thing we can see on brain scans is like the less active area of your brain, depending on different tasks. So with our brain scanner, we take 8 different tests. One's like a closed eye meditation. One's an open eye meditation. One's like a little video game sort of thing that you play. And one's a breathing test. And so then it shows like areas of the brain that are active, like whether you're in competitive mode or relaxation mode and what aren't. And then you can start to really optimize like those. So you can see, head injuries that happened and literally their parents may have dropped them on their head when they were a kid. And people had no idea this area of their brain is less active. And you see that on a brain scan. It's like, ooh, we've got some work to do. We need to jazz that area up a bit, and let's get some activity there. Yeah.
All, very interesting stuff. I don't want to get into deeper details because listeners might just drop off. What I wanted to ask you? Yeah. Because people always want the benefits. They don't necessarily are interested in brain performance in itself, but they're like, okay, it's good to know, but how can it change my life, like my business, my relationships, etc. Like, what did you personally notice that you got better at changing your mental state? Like, how did it affect your life personally? Again, maybe your business, your relationship, like very, maybe tangible outcomes.
Yeah. So when I first got a brain scan, I guess I was on the verge of burnout, but also the end of a 4-year relationship. And so that was, added on top of that. So, throughout that time, really getting good at noticing my own brain states and in how important it is to stay away from the stressful and anxious brain states, right? And then tuning into that and choosing to do something else, whether it is relaxing or meditating or hanging out with friends or trying to find a relationship that is healthy, that's where you can talk about this and you are in a healthier brain state more often with your partner. And the biggest thing of all is really becoming aware of those different brain states, because, take the average person and say, like we said, they have a job and they're working their job, and 5 years down the road they lose the energy and the passion for that job, but they stay in it because they're making decent money and they have to pay a mortgage and take care of their family, and then they start to be in a more stressed brain state because they're not doing something that they enjoy. Then that overlaps into their relationship and how they treat their kids and their family and the people at work, how they feel about themselves. And people go through their entire lives just thinking, oh, I'm a stressful guy, or I'm an angry person, or I'm just an anxious person. I've always bit my nails, so I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. Where we know, when you learn more about the brain, that all of that is changeable. All of that is you can change any of that, no matter what it is. And the brain can heal itself too while it does that, and return to that state when we were like kids, or even when we were young. We were happy all the time. We were enjoying life. We were doing the things that made us happy, laughing and playing. And so, but it takes the awareness and the education of a person, for a person to make those decisions to where they think they can do something better, and they can. So, I think your original, I don't know if I quite answered your original question, but
yeah, the original question that I was aiming at is, how did
I change it?
You mentioned, you were like, on the, the relationship was ending, the business, kind of like on the verge of burning out of that business. So what did change after you started incorporating some of the brain training and adjusting the brain state?
Well, it's just, I think, being in a better state on a more regular basis, like feeling happier, having healthier emotions, realizing I need to avoid the anxious brain state or the stressed brain state more often, and it just overflows into all areas of your life, and so, like, just I think being more aware and growing, and so, it's like that question is like, so I've been studying neuroscience for 4 years just on my own, but then also been doing brain scans for 2 years. And so, but pre all that, like, I was still doing personal growth and continually growing. So it's not like, oh, I got the brain scanner and started studying neuroscience and now I lost 50 pounds, which does help, which does happen, but I'm not that case study for sure. And so it's just another like thing to add to all the other things that I had been doing over the years.
Yeah. But I also think, maybe you didn't notice it, but I also think it helps you to go long term, after certain goals, or, working on your business, on relationships, without burning out and without anxiety, without stress.
Yeah. And actually that's a good point, because one of the things we did do when we started the entrepreneur community, because I had burnt myself out of businesses before, is my partner and I, we asked ourselves, what can we do for the next decade that we know we're going to enjoy? And what's that going to look like? And then build something around that, because we know we know the marketplace well enough. We know entrepreneurs well enough. How can we do that in a way where, 10 years from now, we're still going to be enjoying doing this?
Yeah. And I think, taking care of your brain state actually really helps you to become that long-term thinker.
Mm-hmm.
Before I kind of took control of my brain states, it was really hard for me to imagine working on something for 10 years because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but I need to rest. I need a vacation. I'm already stressed. And now that, you don't have to be stressed to solve problems or to work on things. Like, yeah, I can go for 10 years. I can go for 20 years, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So I think that what was really transformational for me, just knowing that, yeah, I can feel good and still solve problems, and it doesn't have to be all that stressful.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, for sharing personal
Of
story
course.
and business story and related to brain performance. Now I would like to switch gears a little bit more into nomadic lifestyle, nomadic life. And you are a high performer, right? You develop businesses, and a lot of people who are listening to this podcast might be, at the beginning of their journey or working on developing their business or their career. What are some advice, some, personal lessons, some practical tips that you can give to people who are in that state of like, okay, they're maybe beginning their nomadic journey and they also want to grow business. How do you keep yourself productive and high performing and get things done and get, progress going?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Angela. One of the things that I do talk about a lot is, there's a wanderlust to being a nomad. And when you pop down in a new country or a new city, the first thing that comes up for most people is going to see all the things, to going to see, whatever is special about that city or that country, checking out the best, restaurants or food, the typical food, seeing the cultural things, learning a language, whatever it may be. And so when it comes to productivity and growing your business as a nomad, I think one of the most important things to do is to keep your regular schedule and routines, no matter what country you're in. So, for example, before I go to a place, it looks like this. One, I want to make sure that I'm going and staying in a place that is nice. It's good quality. It has good Wi-Fi, great Wi-Fi. So I can do podcasts, so I can do calls. Not going to have an issue there. And to keep my regular work schedule, which works like this, from 8 a.m. to about noon, I work on the bigger picture of my business. I want to get into the flow states and focus on the most important things. And then I have an avocado protein smoothie. And that's my first meal of the day, and that's at noon. And take some supplements. And in the afternoon, I work on the more tasky stuff or do meetings outside of the house or apartment and go through email. And so when I travel the world, inside of my house or apartment, wherever I'm living, life is pretty much the same, no matter what country I'm in. But when I get outside, I may be in Spain or Italy or Thailand or Brazil. When I get outside the apartment, then I'm enjoying the culture and the food and the language and the people and the different types of activities that you can do while you're there. And so, that right there, just knowing that, like, you will change your productivity levels significantly. And I'll tell you why this works, because I had a good friend go on Remote Year, and Remote Year is this awesome program. Yeah, you did too?
Yeah, but I quit it because it didn't work.
Okay, yeah. So Remote Year is this cool program where for a year, you spend 1 month at a time in every different country, right? For the listeners, this. And so the challenge with that, and my friend went through this, he did it actually 18 months, is that he couldn't build his business during that time because he was always so engaged in the social activities and seeing the new sights and sounds. And he felt like he didn't have time to build the business and really enjoy the culture and country that he was going to. And so that's why a lot of people, I think, have switched to what they call slow matting, where they spend like, 2, 3, 6, 8 months in one place and enjoy it, and then maybe go to another place. And so for 4 years, when I was traveling before COVID, I would have 3 locations every year that I would go to. And quite often I would go back to the same apartment, or at least apartment complex, or neighborhood at least. And then that way I knew where my gym was, my grocery store was. And so when you go to a place, if you know where you're going to exercise, where your grocery store is, that you're going to have an awesome place to live that you like, then those are all congruent with you continuing your regular routines to grow your business.
Mm-hmm.
And then you won't get pulled away by doing all these other cool things, but things that take you away from growing your business.
Yes, that's why, the remote here didn't work for me. It just was changing my whole schedule upside down. And I'm like, actually, I quit it after 3 days. I'm like, this is not working.
3 days? Wow.
I'm a very fast decision maker. I'm like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, this is how it goes. It's not working for me.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's how it ended up here, actually. Never planning it, but sorry to interrupt. Besides that, having the routine, that's what I hear, having your schedule that work for you, for your business, sticking with it, right? Do you have any other tools, I don't know, maybe on a lifestyle, fitness, nutrition, anything else that you'd like to mention for people not to burn out, not to go for rails, not to break their plan, but again, grow and develop and work on their business as they did before the nomadic life?
Yeah. I mean, I think like one thing that's worked really well for me is I create quarterly goals in 4 different areas of my life: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And that helps me stay on track of what I want to do in those areas and keep balance, right? So if I have a goal to, let's just say like add X amount more members to the community this month or this quarter, and then also maybe learn salsa dancing. So that would be like an emotional goal. And then a spiritual goal, like meditate 20 minutes a day, Monday through Friday. And then a physical goal would be like go to the gym 5 times a week. And so if you have those are naturally just balance. As long as you're following through with them, they're naturally just balancing your life. And while you're nomading, maybe your emotional goal is to engage with the local community, or to do a spiritual goal of like do a project that gives back to the community, or do a mental goal that's like learn this new language of this area that I'm in. And so that really make sure, like when I write those goals down, I revisit them every week before I plan my week. And so I plan my week revolving around those 4 goals. And I know those quarterly goals, they're going to be in alignment with what I want to do with my life in the bigger picture. And so it's just easy to say, okay, my goal this week is to do 3 salsa classes, go to the gym 5 times, and then onboard X more people into our community, and then meditate. And so I just put that in my schedule, and those are non-negotiables. They're just in my schedule every week before I even start the week. So they're there, they're planned, they're ready to go. And it helps you stay in balance, because when you do, especially when you start off nomading, it's so easy to land in a place and just get engulfed by the food and the culture and all the different things that are new to you. And it's really exciting. But then all of a sudden, you gain 15 pounds and you haven't worked out and you're drinking every night, and you love your Italian classes, but you haven't done anything to your business except like worked on it a couple hours this week. And so you've got to have structure. The more structure that you have, I think the better, the more productive you'll be, and the more sustainable nomading really is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people really underestimate this ability of our brain to follow through with the plan once we have a plan, a very specific plan. Like people think, how do I get motivated, or etc. But sometimes, like very often, actually, all it takes, you choose a goal, you put the action steps in plan, and your brain will do just fine with motivation and all the rest of the stuff. I also noticed that, and it's also, I think it's used by a lot of high performance, people who achieve results, this backcasting, like, okay, this is what I want my life to look like in a year, in 5 years. Okay, now let me work backwards from that, right?
Yes.
What I need to do, like in a year, in half a year, in months, and this week, etc. So I think this is like truly one of the most effective high performance techniques.
Absolutely.
To keep things going. Um, uh, Another question, always curious about that is, as I worked in the area a lot of times, well, not for a long time, what do you do on the side of maintaining, physical self?
Mhm.
Fitness, nutrition, meditation, sleep, like what is your routine there? Because I think I also would like a lot of people to realize that for most people is a huge part of being a high performance person.
Yeah, especially since I've studied, neuroscience quite a bit over the past few years, how important like meditation is, physical exercise, getting into these lower brain waves, brain states, more calm brain states, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've been meditating for years, and so I meditate on a regular basis. These days, like maybe 3 times a week, but I have done an hour meditation Monday through Friday for a year. I've
Mm-hmm.
done numerous meditation retreats. And so I just kind of meditate nowadays when I feel like it. Like I wake up and it's like, yeah, today's a good day for meditation. So that's what I've done this year.
Mm-hmm.
I do jujitsu, and jujitsu is a great sport to do anywhere in the world. And you get to meet locals, and you get to practice, something that's good for mind, body, flexibility, cardio, strength training, all of the above. I think it's a great sport to knock out many different types of exercises at once. And, and so I do that, about 3 times a week, and then go for runs and swims on a regular basis as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have this fun, hard to kill minimum when it comes to my health and fitness. And so I always want to be able to run 3 miles. I always wanted to be able to do 12 pull-ups.
Mm-hmm.
I always dead arm pull-ups. I always want to be able to dead sprint 200 meters nonstop. I always want to be able to swim for a mile, and I
Mm-hmm.
always want to have basic self-defense skills. And if I keep those in my life on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm just saying, like you're harder to kill than like 90% of the people in the world. But it's a good like adaptation of like, oh, if I ever get in a boat accident, I can swim a mile to the shore or float, back. I
Mm-hmm.
have more skills with that. If I ever need to run from, somebody pulls a gun, I could run 200 meters, which is probably farther than most other people can. And so as long as I can run faster than the other guy, I'm okay. Um, just joking. Right? And if I need to run long distances, I can run 3 miles at any time. And if I need to like climb up a wall or anything, I always have those abilities or do basic
Mm-hmm.
self defense. And so that's kind of fun because you can do that anywhere in the world. Obviously you have to find a pool or a lake or ocean if you need to swim, but you can do
Mm-hmm.
most any of those anywhere in the world. And then you keep your fitness up, and it's a fun little healthy competition and fun to talk about, and then bring your friends in to challenge them to do it as well.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of fun. What
Yeah.
about on the nutrition and sleep side?
Yeah, I'm always working to optimize my sleep. So what I do is I turn my phone off around 30 minutes before bed, and then turn the lights down lower. So you're more
Mm-hmm.
into the circadian rhythms of the night, and you can really feel it. I like to go outside right before bed as well and get some fresh air before I
Mm-hmm.
go to sleep. Sometimes I take a cold shower. And I say your day doesn't start when you wake up. Your day starts when you go to bed. Because if
Yeah.
you prepare yourself to go to bed well, you'll sleep better, and then you'll wake up rejuvenated, and you'll have a more productive day.
Mm-hmm.
So I recommend like people keeping that, in their minds. So start when your day starts when you go to bed. And then health, like I do low carb and keto-ish type of foods nowadays. I intermittent fast, and I don't have anything until about noon. And my first meal is usually avocado smoothie with coconut oil and protein powder.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll put some celery in there. But, and that, lasts for a few, keeps my hunger curtailed for a couple hours. I'll have a green tea in the morning, organic green tea. That's the only caffeine that's really good for your brain. And then I'll have a little snack, maybe like a hard boiled egg or some almonds in the afternoon, and then I try to eat it, around 6 o'clock or so, and have a bigger dinner, that's low
Mm-hmm.
carb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing all these details.
Of course.
That's what I notice among people who are high performers and who go long term without burning out. Like you take care of yourself, on
Yes,
all of the levels, like physical,
absolutely.
mental, spiritual, emotional. And that's why I also love kind of like, and high performance, a lot of times they like shy about that. Like, I do this. I'm like, but this is why you're able to do all of the other stuff, at least from my perspective, right? So please
Exactly.
do share.
Like if we didn't work hard on our sleep and the food intake and our exercise, like we couldn't do the other stuff because you just you start to decay. Like as we talked about earlier, you're not growing in those areas, you're decaying. But if you're growing in those areas, it's going to help you grow in the other area too, where you want to build your business and stay motivated. It keeps your motivation up, reduces anxiety and depression, and just keeps you living a more well life.
Yeah, well, life. And I also think, again, this life with a long-term perspective. I read a
Hmm.
study recently, neuroscience study. They were exploring the data around how even one night of not sleeping as much as you needed would turn a person into this flight or fight state,
Yeah.
and all of their responses going to be on a survival side of things, and they're
Yeah.
less cooperative, they're less kind, they're
Yeah.
less generous, right?
Yes.
That's like,
Yes.
if you don't sleep well, it's not just bad for you, for your business, but
It's
also for the
bad for
people
the
around
world.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
The whole world is going to feel it if you don't sleep well. So
Yeah,
focus
so
on your
like,
sleep.
exactly. But yeah, Chris, not gonna hold you any longer. I know you have other plans and need, have time to live your life. So thank you for sharing all these tips, advice, and getting a little bit deeper into performance science side of things. I really
Yeah.
appreciate all of that. And as the last question, please do share with listeners where they can find you, where they can connect with you, learn about your work, communities. Where are the best places?
Yeah. So for our podcast, you can go to The Business Method on any app or the website, thebusinessmethod.com. And then we have a global community of 7-figure bootstrapped entrepreneurs. And the name of that community is M3. M is in Michael, the number 3. M3.club is that website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Thank you. I'm going to link all of that in the show notes. Make sure it's easy for people to click on. And looking forward to, I don't know, connecting and seeing you somewhere in the world.
Likewise, Angela. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Ciao.
Ciao.